Konnichiwa, fellow Armchair General Sans. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4. We're playing as Japan, so we're getting ready. We're a little late historically from the Marco Polo Bridge incident, but I'm just not confident of these reserve divisions. Maybe they'll do okay, but we shall see here soon. How are we doing in Spain? Support that attack. He's gaining some experience here, though not much. Okay, inner war artillery level has been reached. Now, artillery is an interesting thing. Just bring it up because it's sort of showing up here. For the most part, before World War I, artillery had no, I almost want to say none, but none effective recoil mechanism based as part of it. So when you fired an artillery piece, it moved, and then you had to, if you want to fire it into generally the same location, which generally you did, you had to put it back into place. And if you see some film footage of World War I, they have some artillery pieces that you'll see that'll fire, and their wheels will actually sort of go up a rearward moving ramp kind of thing up there, and then for the distance of the recoil, and then sort of go back in. These were obviously well entrenched places, and mobile artillery could never do that. So you had very slow firing rates. And what I sort of wonder with all of these starting artillery, what the hell is this? Because theoretically, if we were to go to Afghanistan or Tibet and start, we'd start at that place with artillery. This is sort of one of the things I don't like about the Hearts of Iron series, generally speaking, not just 4, are these sort of start dates and equipment types. Just what are we building here? At the start of World War I, like I said, generally, there was one country that had a, I think it was pneumatic or hydraulic, either, I'm not absolutely sure. I should think of these things before I start talking about these diatribes. Hydraulic, liquid, pneumatic, air recoil system. That was the French 75mm gun. So basically, you know, the trail, the thing that, the legs that go back from an artillery piece, don't know how many are familiar with this thing, generally have sort of shovels or plow type mechanisms in the back that will dig into the earth when you fire them. A lot of we were just talking about, a lot of the recoil artillery didn't necessarily do that because that would actually flip the gun over, and which would be worse. But the later stuff that you're sort of used to with World War II and mid-World War I is that, so it would sort of dig into the earth. But the great bulk of the recoil of the gun, and we're talking artillery pieces and not mortars. Mortars are, I'm not talking about the sort of Stokes mortar system that we're familiar with, you know, the 60 and 81 millimeter mortars. Talking about like the 18th century big embedded mortars, or 19th century versions, which were very heavy guns that shot very high angle. They were still sort of artillery pieces in that sense, but as opposed to having the sort of light mortar charge, that's sort of a grenade throwing kind of thing that developed for the Brent Stokes mortar system of World War I that developed. But the bigger mortars that were indirect, they channeled their recoil sort of into the earth and didn't move. So that's why, again, sort of saying generally speaking, but field artillery and sort of heavy mobile artillery, things with wheels, generally speaking, like I was saying, before World War I, did not have any internal recoil systems. It was the French 75 that did. So yes, it would slightly dig itself in a little bit more each shot, and so it would slightly change position, but basically it's sitting in the same position, so you could fire it, see where the shell landed, and often with this 75 millimeter gun you were shooting at targets that you could see, and so then you could adjust fire from there, higher, lower, right, left. But if the whole gun moved, you had to sort of get it back to where it was, and then, okay, well, then we need to adjust it from there, up, down the barrel, or right, left. So it was a much more significant to getting it on target, and then once you got it on target, then you had to, I think sometimes they use stakes and other things to sort of mark out the on target position, and so that once it fired, you sort of recollected the gun, bring it back into position, and put it back on target. Where with the French 75, it was just on target. You know, it was staying in the same place, so you could adjust the fire to get it on target much more rapidly, and then once it was on target, it would shoot just about as fast as you could load the thing and shoot. Now, as World War I went on, and as war is an acid test that nations have to you have to adjust to, or you lose. Most of the nations developed similar sorts of systems. The Germans used a 77 millimeter field howitzer. The British used the pound system, which is, to the best of my knowledge, a 25 pounder doesn't shoot a 25 pound shell necessarily. I could be wrong about that, but to my understanding, it's the diameter of a solid round shot of 25 pounds. If I have that right, I'm not sure, because obviously you can adjust the weight of the shell in a 25 pounder. So it's sort of an old archaic barrel measuring system from the Royal Artillery, so that you got your barrel dimensions based off of what had been round shot. And so like a 17 pounder was I don't know how many millimeters, and that's how they did it. And obviously their whole chambering system, so it was sort of a weird archaic system. So those guns did develop during the war. Now Japan, I know, had a lot of leftover pre-World War I artillery, So this is some of the stuff. What the hell is this? Yes, I see 34 as a date here, but does this mean that this is leftover World War I artillery, or is this everything updated? I really think, and one thing I would sort of bog me down, and I keep getting bogged down in trying to mod things, is trying to figure out how to do things, is I wanted to start with a lot of equipment reserves for the nations that start. I wanted France to have a huge amount of rifles and a huge amount of artillery at the start of this game. But I wanted them to be like Lebel rifles, not the Mas 36 that was the standard infantry rifle for World War. I don't know if it was quite standard for World War II, but it was the main rifle for the proper divisions in World War II. But it's model 1936, where the Lebel is a pre-World War I design, both shooting the same cartridge, so maybe a little confusing there. Both the Lebel 8mm Lebel cartridge. But to try to work out what levels of equipment and how effective they are. So probably most nations, most of the equipment would be for rifles, would be World War I rifles as sort of a mass reserve. But I want those to be significantly well, that may be a bit strong, but I want them to be less effective than World War II things. Now, where artillery, Japan would have a lot of artillery, and it's a relative maybe term, but a fair amount of it. But a lot of it would be outdated for even a pneumatic or hydraulic recoil system set up in the World War II, because they would have artillery left over from the Sino Japanese or the Sino-Russian War. Boy, that's not Sino-Russian War. You would have stuff that was produced during the World War I era, even though Japan was basically just occupying some islands out here. And so they'd have a lot of this artillery that could go for fortress divisions, could be useful against fighting against the Chinese and such, but would be excuse me, woefully inadequate against fighting against American divisions that are much more mobile. So as to try to develop, I know I'm giving you some modders talk here, game designers talk, but because interwar artillery, so is this World War I artillery, and what about great big stocks of pre-World War I artillery that were around the world at the time still, that were still damned effective. And if you don't think it wasn't used, it was used in World War II. A lot of it Germany made into things like the Atlantic Wall artillery, was a lot of guns pulled off of other sort of carriage type mounts and put in there, and then you could just simply simulate that as a bonus for building the Atlantic Wall or something, which that may happen. But there's still a lot of different things that can be done, and I sort of want to have that to be and I don't know what these divisions were like historically. I just quite honestly don't know. Were they really just 2 regiments of infantry? Or did they have antiquated artillery or whatnot? And so that you can have a few, if you will, premier divisions and the rest junk, if you will, which the junk divisions would be great sources for occupying China, but they would be lousy at invading Australia, say. Alright, well, let's see another factory here. want to build tanks, but I don't want to focus too much on it because we're not building panzer divisions. I just sort of want a couple of 2 or 3 tank supported divisions that are mobile. Naval bombers should be useful, so let's go with them. So now we're heading down the national focus to start the war with China. Guess one thing that I do sort of miss with this mode, and we'll see that we turn the models off, how the fighters, if anything, will be visible. I have the small fighter mod on that they should make them real tiny, sort of gnats flying around. But I sort of like the ships moving around. But we can see them here when we see what's, fleets on patrol here. And convoy raiding. Just getting ready for conflict with China, and because air is no longer, bombing a specific province or fighting, fighters aren't engaging over a specific province, I sort of am fine with the air not being a counter. Okay, well, let's move a few of these units in here. Yeah, we know there's no orders assigned. I'm planning on doing this on a manual sort of operation. Big division, big stacks of divisions. Okay. Germany has collected Austria. Marco Polo Bridge incident. Chinese authorities claim that the breaking point has been reached in regards to our unwarranted aggression towards China. Our demands for reparations have been refused, and there are reports of Japanese nationals coming under attack in Shanghai. If we needed an excuse to deal decisively with the Chinese, this is it. So, we got that. Now, we're going to try to take it all. Hopefully that will help with our production by occupying good portions of China. Oh good, they're moving units out of Beijing. Seeing as how we're shifting over here. I like a reasonably confident. Don't know if I need a super smart AI. Well, tell you the truth, what I would like is difficulty levels to be really have nothing to do with battle, battle difficulty or production or resource difficulty. Unfortunately, when they do that, and I really don't like that. As a way to show it what I want difficulty to be, primarily AI levels. That's what I would like to do. And so, and on like super high difficulty, just let the AI cheat and see everything. Because supposedly the AI only sees what it's supposed to see, to make its judgments. So it can see that I've moved troops onto its border here, so it's reacting to it. But if they're all, too deep in here, they can't see it, so it doesn't react to it. That's what it's supposed to be doing, if I understand everything correctly. Just, excuse me, to make the, super high difficulty, just let them all cheat and see everything and make decisions that way. And then below that have different AI difficulties is how I would want to do it. Because I want to sort of play World War II. I don't want to, make Japan super strong. Oh, let's give Japan 4 times the production rate, and wouldn't that be harder to take? Well, yeah, but that's not World War II. What I want to do is am I fighting against Rommel, or am I fighting against Paulus, if you will, or whatnot? That's how I want to do the difficulty levels, not just on various production and other measures. Okay, the Marco Polo Bridge incident. Japanese and Chinese forces have skirmished inconclusively over this strategic Marco Polo Bridge located southwest of, I was calling it Beijing, but it was Beiping at the time. The name actually changes over the years. It's not just our pronunciation. It was Peking, and it's probably an Anglo or an Anglicization of the Chinese name for it, but it was Peking, sort of under the imperial system, and then, if I understand correctly, it moved to Beiping. It's a different sort of meaning, because the capital was down in Nanking, and then at some point, even though I think most of us in the West were still calling it Peking, sort of the old imperial name for it or whatever, they changed it to Beijing. So at least that's my understanding, and if somebody really knows, they can post the correct thing in the thread below. China has rejected Japan's demands for an apology and territorial concessions, claiming instead that breaking the law. Yes. So we've shifted some force. We're bringing these guys closer. So it looks like they have 3 divisions there. Their Navy spotting. Oh, how are we doing in Spain? I thought we were just hanging out mostly. Okay, well. 2 divisions. Let's go besiege Barcelona. Or Barcelona. Yes. Divisions. Well, let's cancel that. Let's clean up some of this other area. They're gonna support that. Let's see if we can roll up. Some of the territories here. battalion divisions we put there. Repair defenses, good. Well, since we're getting ready for the Great Ground War, we will do that. Also, since we're getting ready for this, let's use that. We are training up more divisions, hopefully enough, but we will find out. Yes, I may very well crash and burn, because I'm not an experienced Japan player. Just, you may have noted that I posted down in the description. I'm starting over, I know this is now a couple of days later, with new series now that we have Hearts of Iron 1.1 out, the Red Ball Express patch. The last German series with the invasion of Russia, I look at that as going to a stalemate, and I made some, in my opinion, critical errors leading up to it. The Panzer divisions were too few and too weak. I didn't have enough half tracks to put a mechanized regiment in all Panzer divisions. What I should have done is put at least a few Panzer divisions with mechanized regiment or battalions. That would have helped. Too much production was put into fighters. I say that, but I don't know that I had enough fighters. It just the attrition levels. I believe this has been worked over somewhat in this version that was released, but the attrition levels were just god-awful high on fighters, so too much focus was done in on that. So that's some of the problems, if you will, with the last German series. So that is over, stalemated in sort of the start of Russia. We'll be playing Germany again, of course, not right away, but we will be playing it again. The American series was just sort of done because I was testing out various invasion plans for the Soviet Union and how to do it, and I didn't know if I was going to hit a spot and not have any new Hearts of Iron stuff, so I just started the American series just to do it. It's going to have a reboot at some time, so if you were looking forward to it and watching that, I know it was getting some views and a few people were really happy that it was happening. It was only 5 episodes in, so just sort of the start. At some time in the near future, not days but weeks, I will probably reboot that over again with the new patch here, so you can look forward to that. So let's see if we can dig in here a little bit more. Used to numbers of divisions, this looks incredibly weak. Excuse me, weak for me. Looks like we have plenty of artillery, so I'm going to reduce the artillery even more and increase rifles. I'm going to train up a couple of more. 3 more divisions there. One thing that and let's deploy these. These are well trained enough. Get ready for the action here. They'll get experience in combat. One thing that China does that the Soviet Union doesn't so much is that if, say, if we get overrun, well, all that ain't good, of course. But if this becomes a stalemate up here, because China has 64 some divisions in this area, that's fine, because we can do like what we're doing here. If we can produce more units, the coastline allows us the flexibility of invading from multiple aspects. Okay, I want one more civilian factory to help pay for my imports that are increasing. It's sort of some of the reason I'm building those. I want to build a couple more naval factories. Now we are going to need a significant shift to the sea operations if we're going to take on America, the Philippines, and these other places. But still, the army factories, if you will, are useful there because they're going to be building air power, whether it's carrier planes or land-based planes on our many islands. I don't know if they all have airports or not. Really. Yes, that does. And so long as we can base some level of aircraft out there, I'm hoping to be able to use that air power. Okay, well, we're going to end this episode here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. Do appreciate it. And please post comments, questions, suggestions, ideas. Love hearing from you. Sayonara.